Today, I'd like to welcome a new sponsor of the podcast, the Media Insider. A lot of small businesses are attempting to be successful without a clear communication strategy. The Media Insider helps small businesses and entrepreneurs build powerful, professional brand and communication strategies without the big agency price tag. From messaging to media visibility, they give you the insider tools and step-by-step guidance you need to stand out, connect with your audience, and grow your business with confidence. Ready to look like the pro you already are? Visit themediainsider.co and start building a brand as well as communicate successfully to your perfect audience. The Media Insider, where big ideas don't need big budgets. Today's guest has truly taken life to new heights, literally. Robert DeLaurentis is not only the owner of DeLaurentis International Airport in Oak Harbor, but he's also a record-setting aviator, accomplished author, and a philanthropist. He was the first solo pilot to fly a small, single-engine plane around the world in 2015. The flight covered 26,000 nautical miles and 23 countries in 98 days for a fundraising campaign to support aviation programs. The global peace mission was called One Planet, One People, One Plane, Oneness for Humanity, in a modified 1983 aircraft named Citizen of the World. In 2019, Robert achieved what many thought impossible, flying from the South Pole all the way to the North Pole, a journey that tested endurance, courage, and imagination. He flew the longest distance in a twin-engine or single-engine turboprop, 18.1 hours in a flight, and became the first and fastest polar circumnavigation in the world in that type of airplane. That's a mouthful, but he did it, and if you'd like to watch the documentary about this flight, head over to Amazon Prime, Apple TV, or YouTube TV. I've watched it, and it is very interesting. It is called Peace Pilot to the Ends of the Earth and Beyond. If you head over to his website, flyingthrulife.com, you can also watch the documentary. While you are on his website, you will learn so much more about Robert besides my interview today. When he's not in the cockpit, Robert is writing and sharing those stories with the world through his publishing company, Flying Thru Life, and supporting causes through the DeLaurentis Foundation, the charitable arm that channels his adventures into real-world impact. Robert's life is a rare mix of vision, adventure, and purpose, and today we'll explore not just the flights and the feats, but the mindsets that fuels them, and how all of it connects back to Whidbey Island. So fasten your seatbelt, because this conversation is about to take you from Oak Harbor to the edges of the earth, and maybe even into your own next adventure. Hi, Robert.
Hi.
Thank you for letting me come to your airplane hangar and interview you today. Mark Say, as you know, recommended you to me, and when I dove into your story, it was so interesting. I thought the listener would really love it. Like I told you, this podcast is about the stories of the people who live here, and we've had people here that have lived here for decades, all the way up to newbies like you and I are. Let's dive in.
Well, you're at more than just the hangar. You're at DeLaurentis International Airport.
That's right. You're absolutely right. DeLaurentis International Airport. One thing that I didn't put in here, I was going to ask you about your last name. Are you Italian?
100%.
100%. Are you related to the DeLaurentis in Seattle?
I don't know about the DeLaurentis in Seattle.
Okay.
Most people ask, am I related to Dino DeLaurentis from Hollywood?
Okay.
And I'm not.
For some reason, I'm going to have to research this, listener, because you probably already know. There is an Italian store on Pike Street. I think it's called DeLaurentis.
It's actually close, but it's spelled differently.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
I've seen it.
All right, good. So I'll have to look it up. I know that. Okay. So let's dive in first and foremost into your epic flights. What first sparked you to get into aviation?
I don't think it's something that people learn. I think it's something they're born with. And I was in Africa with my mentor, Susan Gilbert. We were at a shopping center getting something to eat, and there was a couple that was busy talking and a little girl in a high chair. And there was a plane flying over, and she was pointing at it while her parents, talked. And I thought, you know what? This passion for flight starts way early. A lot of people think it's developed by high school kids, but I think you're born with it, quite honestly.
That's interesting. Did you fly really early as a child?
No, I had some model planes and controlled planes, and then I built some, plastic planes, and eventually I made an attempt at radio controlled planes. but it really didn't start until I had the time and money together. And that came around age 40, 43.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're a pilot, an author, and an airport owner. So when people ask you, what do? What do you say first?
I usually say that I'm a polar and equatorial circumnavigator. And then they look at me like, what did he just say? What does that mean?
Yeah.
I started life in the military.
Okay.
And then started a successful business in San Diego. I was a landlord, still am. And it wasn't until later in my life that I had the resources again of time and money to fly, because it takes those two things together.
Right. So you've flown all around. So what did that journey teach you about yourself and about humanity?
Well, it's really interesting because the most remote place I've been is to the South Pole.
Yeah.
And I was very much looking forward to doing that by myself, because there's things you learn about yourself when you're out in the middle of nowhere with no support. It was a solo flight, of course. There were some people that wanted to come along, but I knew that the greatest learning would probably come in those remote places. And I was hoping to have an epiphany, like I would find God or something out here in these remote parts of the world. But it really took me about a year to figure out everything I had learned on the trip. One of those things was, I was connecting the North and South Poles and everybody in between, so those 23 countries that I visited. And what I found was that people are more similar than different. It doesn't matter if their skin is a particular color or their religion is different, or socioeconomically, they're different. They all have the same desires. And for a lot of people, it's family. It can be health, happiness, financial security. But people are people. There's just the things around them that change.
So I was thinking just now when you said you wanted to go alone, do you get a lot of adrenaline from fear?
I guess some would say I'm an adrenaline junkie to some degree. I can't say that the actual trip was enjoyable, because it was terrifying and stressful and very dangerous. In hindsight, I'm really happy that I did it and it was successful and our sponsors benefited. And, we emerged with a wonderful movie and books. Yeah, there's some excitement in it, pushing yourself to your absolute limits and then sometimes beyond. I think that's a test.
So talking about that, so you flew from the South Pole to the North Pole. Was that the direction?
South to North.
Pole.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that and what the experience was like? You said a little bit, but just a little bit more about why you were doing that and your experiences.
Yeah, it's funny. One of my friends told me that I did it for myself, and I would agree, but there was a lot more involved than just me, right? I was meeting some of my personal goals, but aviation benefited. We had 95 sponsors, and I was showcasing, the technology and the quality of that gear. Science benefited. We had three main scientific experiments on the citizen of the world. So there was our biofuels experiment where we used biofuels over the poles. There's something called ADSB, which is a tracking system that we used. But the most important things were the plastic particle experiment for the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. And, the fact that we were out there in the world showing people that you could survive and flourish during COVID when, a lot of people were sort of retreating. So we were very proud of that.
So when you started, what was the difference to you in the feeling from standing on the South Pole?
The other thing is we had a NASA wafer scale spaceship.
Okay.
That's actually on display in our FBO, the Fixed Based Operator Office. And that took over 8,000 pictures on the trip. It measured temperature, altitude, speed.
Wow.
And that was the first time that NASA experiment had been outside of a lab. So another big one we're very proud of.
Yeah, you should be proud of that. From a human and a feeling perspective, when you were standing on the South Pole, was there a different feeling than standing on the North, besides the weather?
Well, I didn't stand on either pole. I overflew them.
You flew it. Okay.
Yeah. It's very different environment. I had different things happening at the times. Over the North Pole, I lost all navigation for 5 hours. So, that was challenging. At the South Pole, you actually fly there and you use up more than half your fuel to get there. So on your way back, you're counting on wind currents to help you make that extra distance. And again, I lost navigation. Much colder at the South Pole, minus 60 Celsius. And jet fuel gels at a much lower or a higher temperature. So it's really, terrifying in different ways.
Well, I saw some of that in the trailer you sent me and also some things that I looked up on YouTube. But Why don't you tell a little bit about your documentary and where people can find that? We're going to watch that this weekend.
We're very, very proud of that documentary. It took an enormous amount of time and energy and money to make it happen, but it's available on Apple TV, Amazon Prime, and Google TV. It's called Peace Pilot.
Peace Pilot, right. For many, flying is just about logistics. For you, it seems to be a spiritual journey as well. How do you describe the feeling of being in the air?
That's probably one of my most special places to be. And I think it is a very spiritual experience to be out there, sometimes by yourself, sometimes sharing it. But it's magical. You're connected to nature. In the case of the Citizen of the World, you have those two Predator B drone engines just pumping out 2,300 horsepower, 400 miles an hour. In terms of a connection with a machine and nature, it's unique. And for me, my meditation comes when there's silence. So the hum of the engines, out there in the middle of nowhere, you really get to have some solid thinking time and connection. I think it's close to God as you can get.
Yeah. Okay. So you're up there and you're close to God and you're experiencing a spirituality. What about your daily life? How do you incorporate that when that's not there every day?
Well, that's funny because when I got back from the South Pole, I remember I got back to San Diego and I had my checkbook register in front of me and I was coding each check where it should be distributed to. And I thought how different an experience is it when you get back? My daily life is very different. It starts the same. I wake up, start the fire, in the Pacific Northwest, have a cup of coffee, talk to my mentor, and then, sort of get on with the day's projects. But the airport and aviation is a little bit of a side hustle for me because there is this real estate company, it's based out of San Diego. So that takes some time. There's the publishing company and the foundation as well that drives a lot of this. There's a lot of other projects, but I have to say this airport's been one of my greatest joys.
Oh, good.
Such a radical transformation, such a contribution to the community.
So how does your spirituality and your programs work and your talks where you go out and help people overcome fear, uncertainty, self-doubt?
That's a big question wrapped up into one.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the foundation as a whole, you'll see there's many different pieces to it, and they all sort of support each other. We have our children's books, and then the big kid books and the audiobooks and the movie, some of the products. And then there's going out into the world and these aircraft and setting world records and the contribution to society. Most recently, there's Sugar, our Discovery Flight plane that I just bought and renovated for the kids in the community. So, all this is aviation related, and it's a way to pull people together using aviation. And, it's kind of funny because we started out working on individual pieces and then they all sort of came together. And I think we're at a really good place now for having impact.
So what is your definition of citizen of the world?
Well, that's a good question too. If you look at the word citizen, the word Zen is in there as well, which is the name of the first book, Zen Pilot, Flight of Passion, The Journey Within. I think we're all citizens of the world, and as much as we find ourselves disconnected at times, we are part of that whole. And the things we do and the things we don't do have impact on the world. And, as AI sort of drives us further apart, we need to focus more on the things that bring us together, our similarities, working together. And this spiritual connection is something that, is a thread that connects everybody.
So talking about your books, when did you start writing and what compelled you to write?
Well, my mentor, Susan Gilbert, who's also the vice president of the DeLaurentis Foundation, that's one of the things she does is she helps people write books and get their platforms up and running. And she encouraged me to start blogging. And I started writing, and then eventually, those turned into books. But really, it started back in 2014. I had gotten to a place in my business life where I had a great amount of success, and I was feeling, gratitude, and that I was so fortunate and I needed to give back in the world. So I prayed on it, and what I came back with is I would make a deal with the universe that if a house I had that I could not sell for a long time would sell, if my rental properties were rented, and if a building I had that had burned became a non-issue, I would give 2 years of my life and just write and lecture and go out, set some records, and try and draw some attention to aviation. And within 2 weeks, I had an all cash offer on the house. There's no vacancies, and the insurance company wrote me a check. So there was this financial windfall. And over the next 2 weeks, one of my buddies who had passed away, his family paid back some money he owed me. And then I got a tax refund. And then my dad had agreed to pay for a portion of my grad school. He wrote a check. And I went, oh my God, this is the clearest, message that I could get. And what started in 2013 has now gone to 2025, because the more I gave back, the more I got out of it. And I always thought that was a little bit of a cliche when you'd hear people, talk about, okay, give and you'll get. Yeah. But it's turned into an amazing life, and we just keep giving. The DeLaurentis Foundation has given millions of dollars over the last 10 years, and we still continue to do that. And in this case, it's for the community. This airport, I said from the very beginning, is for the community, for the kids. And then after all these things are satisfied, it's for the pilots. And the pilots didn't really like that very much, because they're used to getting a lot of stuff for free. But we put that all back into proper alignment.
Right. That's fantastic. So how do you hope your stories impact readers?
I hope that it shows them when they're feeling overwhelmed, when they think something's not possible, that they should give up, maybe that it didn't work out the way they thought, that it's really happening for a bigger purpose. And sometimes persistence is the solution, even when it's extremely, extremely difficult.
Your children's books introduce the kids to the wonders of flight and exploration. What inspired you to write for kids?
Well, actually, the characters in the children's book are all in this hangar. The Citizen of the World, Sugar, the Sea Swan, and the Cub here. Well, it ties back to that moment where we saw the little girl pointing up into the air at the plane. And a lot of aviation companies will focus on high school kids because they're very close to becoming, workers in the workforce or becoming pilots. But since we realized that the urge or the drive starts much earlier, we decided to focus on the smaller kids. And there aren't a lot of people doing that because they like to focus on the older ones. So that's kind of where we started. And we wanted to bring aviation, make it come alive for the younger kids.
Yeah. So what's been the most surprising reaction you've had from someone who's read your work or heard you speak?
It's what I said earlier about I was doing it just for me. And I realized that was someone who hadn't seen the movie, hadn't read the books. And, if you look at our projects, there's some benefit for me, right? But the sponsors benefit because their products get tested, shown in the world. There's the scientific benefit. Our plastic particle experiment, I think, will at some point be recognized for a Nobel Prize. And then you have the benefit to the community. You have the benefit to the pilots. So if you look at that, it's a win-win-win-win-win, right? Five groups are winning. So I would say the smart part of all this is that so many people can win. Everybody's moving in the same direction. We have a similar goal, and everybody benefits.
Let's pause for a moment and take time for information about sponsoring Local Whidbey Podcast. Season 1 launched with a bang. I started with just over 2,000 unique listeners in my very first month, and it just kept growing. Over the course of the season, more than 9,000 people tuned in to hear real conversations with artists, entrepreneurs, farmers, musicians, nonprofit leaders, and everyday locals doing extraordinary things. And since the last week in January 2025, the website withmagsy.com pages have been opened more than 226,000 times. And get this, even during our summer hiatus, the podcast continued to draw new ears. We averaged over 1,500 unique listeners each month without releasing a single new episode. I guess once a Whidbey Island fan, always a Whidbey Island fan. So now with season 2 in full swing, I've got one more exciting update. I'm officially opening the podcast up to sponsorships. If you're a local business or creative venture looking to connect with an audience that already loves Whidbey Island as much as you do, there's a shiny new sponsorship page on withmagsy.com. You'll find it under the podcast tab. Go take a peek. I must confess, I'm not a fan of loads of ads that go on forever in podcasts. So as not to be a hypocrite, I'm looking for businesses who want to get a message out that is helpful and interesting with my guidance and works well with this podcast. After much thought and being a communication strategist for over 25 years, I'm looking for sponsors who help the community thrive and can give me an ad content that is highly trackable because it strikes a chord or is highly helpful. Whether you've listened from the start or you're just now discovering this island storytelling series, I'm so glad you're here. If you're interested and want to have a chat, again, check out sponsorships under the podcast tab at withmagsy.com. Now, let's get back to the interview. So, Robert, the DeLaurentis Foundation is the charitable arm of your publishing company, Flying Thru Life. What inspired you to connect your adventures to philanthropy? I know you kind of answered that, but if you wanted to expand on that.
Yeah, it tied into giving back.
Right.
And I had lived a blessed life at that point, and I felt like I had learned some stuff along the way that I wanted to share. And I don't think life is just about making money or even just about family. There's a lot of different, elements to it. And I think living in a space of gratitude is probably the highest energy level you can get to. So I wanted to give back, and it started and it grew and it just got better and better, and I enjoyed it. So I decided to continue, and now it's been quite a while, over 20 years.
So giving back blessed you, really helped you probably more than you thought it would.
Yeah, it surprised me, right? Because I thought I wasn't in that space, but it's I think a noble pursuit for people.
So can you share a project or a cause the foundation supports that's especially close to your heart?
Yeah, the one that's especially close to my heart now is Sugar, our training plane, Cessna 172G. And it's been a 1.5 to 2 year project with her. We named her after the Sugar Studio because Jennifer Barnes has been a big contributor to this effort. But when I first got the airport, I came into this main hangar and there were planes in disrepair. And I saw Sugar, and she was polished aluminum, which most planes are not. They're painted. And I thought, that's a special plane. I didn't quite know how it would fit in, but I saw her many times, when I would come into the hangar. She hadn't flown in a couple of years, and I'm someone who likes, like Mark Zaya, right, to renovate things. Yeah. So I thought, well, maybe we can use her to inspire kids to fly. A lot of people have different ways of doing that. And it's tough because a lot of them want to play on their computers and play with video games. But the panel on an airplane is the best video game in the world. And you're living it, right, while you're flying. So we decided to outfit her with some modern avionics that are fun for, button pushing, electronic ignition for better performance, vortex generators on the wings to give it more lift. And the plane started to improve, and I thought, well, this plane could be part of our museum someday. So the kids would come in, get to see a really cool plane, fly it, and then see it go back into the museum. So that was my idea of how best to inspire the kids. And there's other parts of that. We have a flight simulator. We have the RC Flying Club that's coming together to get them excited. We have a flight instructor that's going to talk to the kids about that.
Where's the flight simulator?
It's off the pilot's lounge. In fact, I've written for the simulations so the kids can come in and they can pick any plane they want and they can fly it over the North and South Poles.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Welask here on the island?
No.
With High View. She was someone I interviewed and moved here at the beginning of COVID as well. And she's created after-school programs for the whole island and having professionals like yourself teach. And she would love to know about this because she wants kids to be able to do all kinds of things that they don't do during the school day. So I'll introduce you to her. She's wonderful.
That'd be a great introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So are you finished with your own daring personal adventures and you're just concentrating on impact of others, or you still have some things you want to do?
No, I've got a few more projects left in me. The engines for the Citizen of the World and the propellers have been sent in to be rebuilt. So they're pretty amazing machines that can be used in different ways. I don't know where that's going to fit in. I took on the airport project because I thought, it would be less risky to do something on the ground. And there were some challenges that actually made it more risky at times. I don't know what the future holds. When I was flying over the South Pole and the North Pole, it was so challenging and so dangerous and so scary there were times when I could feel like the tears just coming out of my eyes. And I was wondering, why this was happening. Was it cosmic torture, or was I being prepared for something bigger? And I think I've been prepared for something bigger. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was thinking about that when you were talking about that, because I'm into that kind of thing. What is this preparing me? What's going to happen later? That's why I'm learning this lesson. So let's talk about Whidbey Island and you being here. What drew you to Oak Harbor?
Well, after the polar circumnavigation, I needed some quiet time to work on the book, the audiobook, and the movie. I also have a mentor, Susan, who I mentioned, who lives over in Falls City. I wanted to be closer to her.
Yeah.
I had been in San Diego for over 35 years, and I wanted a different chapter in my life to start.
Okay.
And I wanted somewhere quieter, closer to nature. And it was, of course, during COVID that I came up here, and there was very few places that you could get to by car that was on an island. It didn't require a ferry. Whidbey Island was one of them. And it had a Navy base, was close to me in San Diego, since I have some time in the military.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, wow, this will be a good, safe place. Military's here. It'll feel familiar to me. And there weren't that many houses for sale.
Yeah.
Right?
At the time. Yeah, there are now.
And then I found one that I really liked. So that made it a pretty easy decision.
So the saying is airports are gateways to possibility.
Are what?
Gateways to possibility.
Sure.
Right? What do you want visitors to feel when they land at your airport?
I want them to feel the passion that went into this place. 2 years of really backbreaking work, a lot of help from our volunteers. Some actually heroic efforts, I would say. Sounds like a strong word. This gentleman right here, Don Meehan, is one of them. Skip Boyer is another one. They just gave unconditionally. Yeah. It was really inspiring to me. And then I want people to see a beautiful, light-filled place, very different than when first came here. There was abandoned cars and planes and 80 cubic yards of garbage that had just been dumped. All that's been cleared out. Yeah, it's a special place. It's actually a blueprint. There's a bigger picture to all this. Most people don't know this. Part of the reason for doing the project was to open up the 14,000 private airports like this to the public, because a lot of people don't want to deal with the publics. What we did is we created a blueprint to show those private airport owners how it makes sense for them to be open to the public. And that's an article that's going to be published in AOPA magazine, I believe, this coming month.
Okay. So you and I were talking earlier about especially people like you and I who have lived in big cities, and you come to a smaller place and some of the struggles to do that. But what we find is that Whidbey Island has a lot of creativity and innovation. And when you were talking about the people that have helped you, they're really audacious. So I like to call people audacious islanders here.
Okay.
So how do you see your work aligning with the spirit of this community?
Well, the community was always a very high priority, if not one of the first ones in this project. We wanted to make the airport a viable place to connect it to the outside world, kind of like I connected the North and South Poles, right? It's connecting Whidbey to other places like SeaTac, Canada, the San Juans, and we've been selected as the first urban air mobility hub for the state of Washington, which means when vertical takeoff planes, electric and hybrid drive, become mainstream, they're being used in the military now, then it will connect us to the rest of Washington. And this is the ideal location, really, because we're equidistant from all these big groups of people. And it's safe to have a hub in the center, especially with water around, right? There's no population to worry about. So we're very excited about that next chapter. And to the east, on the east side of the property, we have 42 acres of available land. And there are very few places that are already designated as airport with upgraded infrastructure like we've done, that have available land and is in an ideal position. So we are the ideal location for the next urban air mobility hub.
That's fantastic. That's one of the things I've learned and have been, for me, starting this podcast, is when I interview people, is all the exciting things you wouldn't know. I wouldn't know if I had not been doing this podcast at all.
Right.
And so for me, it's very exciting to hear things like this and the progress.
Yeah, it's tremendous progress. And, a lot of people ask me, are you going to reestablish the service from this island to SeaTac? Mm-hmm. Because in the past, Kenmore Air had that. But when the shuttle service came to the island, ground-based shuttle service. It became cheaper, and that eliminated the military contracts.
Yeah.
So we will hopefully reestablish that when it becomes an urban air mobility hub. The big question is when. The state doesn't have any money. Just the growth of these urban air mobility vehicles, it's called eVTOL, will take some time.
So, the very first friends that we ever made on this island was because my husband, Mike, rode SeaTac shuttle every week. And he was riding with people who had bought homes here but hadn't transferred here yet. And they were flying back to where they worked.
Oh, okay.
And so when they would be back on the weekends, he would, he made friends with them. So we would get together. Because it was COVID. We couldn't meet people,
Right.
Like to say, my neighborhood is wave friendly. That's all we could do was wave during COVID. So yeah, we really appreciate he really appreciated the SeaTac shuttle for many reasons besides getting into the airport.
Yeah, Darby does a great job.
Yes.
I've actually been over there and he showed me the facility. We hope to work together, right, in the future because there's room for both.
Yeah, my husband fell asleep. He was the only one on there and his wallet fell out. And it was really late at night. I went and picked him up, at the grocery store parking lot. And he gets home and it wasn't in his pocket to put on the dresser. And he called them immediately. And of course, it was closed by then. And he was there when they opened, 3 a.m. or something. And they had it. They had picked it up and put it away for him. They were going to look him up. They would have had his number. But they opened the gates when they saw his car there.
Yeah.
Well, this must be the guy that left his wallet. So yeah, they're very nice. So let's talk about your legacy.
Okay.
Right? So both in the sky and here on the ground. What do you hope that it is?
Well, that's something I think about a lot, actually. And this phase of my life is really about legacy building. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason for, the airport and the books and these world records. Yeah. A lot of what I'm doing now is about legacy building. Once you get to the point where you're retired and you're focusing on other things, you want to leave something behind to make the world a better place. And that's really what the DeLaurentis Foundation does as well. So it will fund this airport for the next 100 years. That's all, money that's been set aside and structure that's been put in place. We hope to continue with the books. We feel like this movie is fantastic. We've gotten great reviews. The challenge is getting it out into the world and understanding that industry. But we think that that's the very best representation of us and our foundation and the people that support us. So we hope that goes global. And certainly on the platforms that we have it on, it has the ability to do that. But I will continue to focus on legacy. Our kids program is the next focus now that the airport is operational, and so is Sugar. So we'll see what we can do with that. And then open to possibilities. We funded some scholarships over the years. We're hoping that the science gets the full recognition it deserves and improves the planet. What we determined on this plastic particle experiment was that there's more plastics over the poles than there is along the equator where all the people are. So all this plastic is getting put into the atmosphere over the poles, and it's pollution that humans create. It's actually more important than the plastic islands in the ocean because we're breathing in these plastic particles that are accumulating. So yeah, we'll just continue with our legacy building. I'm recharging for the next project, so we'll see where that takes me. But for now, just enjoy life and the airport and the different projects we have.
That's great. So I like to do rapid fire questions, and some of them are silly, just, to do that because they're just fun. So my first question is, when was the last time you flew commercially?
I flew commercially less than a month ago.
Oh, did you? Okay. I didn't know if you flew yourself everywhere.
Well, since the Citizen of the World had the forced landing, these other planes are not long distance planes.
Okay.
So I went back to Texas for the next plane I'm going to buy, which is a similar one to the one I flew around the world in 2015. So that's being modified and upgraded right now.
Oh, interesting. So when you fly commercial, are you an aisle guy to get out, or are you a window guy to look out?
No, I'm a window guy.
To look out. Yeah.
Got to look out. Got to fly from my seat.
Okay, so your favorite airport in the world besides your own?
Yeah, that's That's a tough one. I had to think about that a lot. I like Catalina Island quite a bit, and I spend part of my year in San Diego, flying out to that again island. There's lots of history there. It's challenging and beautiful as well.
Yes, it is. So when you were flying around the world, did you bring snacks?
I did. I had all kinds of food with me.
Yeah.
I typically will load up on a little bit of sugar before I land to get a little, hyped up. So sometimes chocolate or a protein bar, sometimes fruit, anything that's, not liquid for the most part is a good thing.
So what's always in your flight bag?
Well, my flight bag is actually right here, and it was specially designed for me by Lightspeed, which is an aviation headset manufacturer, and they called it the DeLaurentis Adventure Bag.
Nice.
And in it, I have my iPad, which no pilot will fly without, a knee board, some emergency locating devices that'll position you on somebody's screen anywhere in the world so they can find you, some pens, some water, spare set of glasses in case they get knocked off, things like that.
So do you prefer morning flights or night?
Always morning.
Always morning.
Very rarely do I fly at night. I'm just more alert, and your chances for a safe flight that you'll survive, I think, are best when you're alert and well rested.
So besides your own experiences, what is your favorite book or movie or both about aviation?
It would be Peace Pilot.
Peace Pilot. Yeah.
I've watched it probably more times than anybody on the planet. Part of that was necessity, but it always brings tears to my eyes. It's a very emotional thing to watch. And I don't think there's been another movie like it. One of the things that sort of inspired me early on was Richard Bach's books. And they all have a spiritual component to flying. And I actually got to talk to him on the phone once because he lived over on Orcas Island. And I was very inspired by what he did. And it's sort of my modern continuation of that.
So tell the listener who that is, though.
Richard Bach was one of the most famous authors on the planet in the 1960s, and he wrote many books. One of his most famous, though, was Jonathan Livingston Seagull, about a seagull that learned to fly and overcame a lot of the obstacles that were present for him and his community, and did adventurous flying as well.
Okay. So one word that describes how you feel when you're taking off.
Freedom.
Freedom. Yeah. So do you have a dream destination you've never been to?
Yeah, one of the places I wanted to stop on my polar circumnavigation was an island called Svalbard. And it's just north of Sweden.
Oh.
And it was going to be one of my stops before I went over the North Pole. Supposedly a very beautiful place. A lot of historic flights have been there, or I've stopped there. I definitely want to go back. I may go there next year. I don't know if I'll necessarily fly myself there, but I'll definitely stop in.
So if you weren't a pilot or a real estate developer, what career would you have chosen?
I noodled on that for quite a while this morning when I was trying to prepare for this. And honestly, I could not come up with anything else.
Yeah, because you never thought about anything else.
Well, when I was in elementary school, I wanted to be a doctor during the week and a race car driver on the weekend. And I found that I got a C- in chemistry in high school. So that was never going to happen despite my greatest efforts. And then I went to BMW driving school and got nauseous on my first few laps. So I was like, okay, well, that's a bust on both of those. So I couldn't come up with anything better. I think I'm living a blessed life and I'm very thankful.
So when you're flying, do you turn on music or do you like the silence?
That's again a great question. I have a playlist in the book Peace Pilot at the back. It's something I listen to and I still have on my phone, but my preferred thing is silence. In fact, I live most of my life in silence because I consider that meditation. And then there's a very famous quote by Carolyn Mace that silence is oxygen for the soul. So the more of that I can get, the better.
I'm not someone who minds silence either.
Yeah.
I get in my car and completely forget about turning on the radio or anything. I do have gotten very addicted to podcasts and will listen to that because there's so many subjects out there, but I don't have a problem with that either. I kind of like it as well. Yeah,
I have this speaker on my desk that's about ready to fall off here, but it's been here for 2 years. I've never used it.
Oh.
So, I guess I like silence.
Robert, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this interview. I hope you did as well.
Absolutely.
And I think our listeners will love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.